Welcome back to the Branded Podcast. Well, it's not welcome back if it's your first time here, but welcome nonetheless. Justin, who do we have today?
Today we have Trish Higgins.
Trish. I like your name because I'm Tristan, so you're Trish.
Yes.
And I've been called Trish before once. Anyway.
Randomness.
So,
okay.
Yeah, it's a little bit random, but that's me.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, how do you know you're a Christian?
How do I know I'm a Christian?
Yeah. Well, we just start there. That way,
That's a different start. Yeah,
because
I like it.
we try
Yeah.
to do this journey to the cross, and so I thought I would just start right there. And I've been thinking about it. Trish, go ahead.
I know I'm a Christian because the Lord has shown me multiple times how much He loves me and how He adores everything that is in my life. He brings people into my life. He's a healer. He's a provider for me, and He's my rock, and He's my first love.
Wow.
Awesome.
So when did you develop this first love? That would be the next. When did you step across the threshold of faith and receive Jesus as your Savior?
I received Jesus as my Savior. I was first always known of God. I was raised as a Catholic believer.
Did you go to Catholic school?
No, I went to catechism.
Okay, yeah, you went through that whole process, yeah.
And there, as going to the Catholic Church with my family, they were so adamant about going to Catholic school, catechism and all the sacraments that one does in the Catholic faith.
So sacrament is like a work or an action? Is that what you classify as sacrament
it's
as?
First Communion, baptism.
Okay, so the actions of faith then.
Yes, the
All right.
actions of faith. And but as I was there, I never felt connected to the Lord. I was a kid that always questioned everything, and I still do. I question everything, and I would ask about why is it this way? As far as going to God, you have to go through a priest to get to God because He's so untouchable, and also you would have to pray to the Mary.
Before we get too deep into that
Okay.
particular in Catholicism and the practices, I'm interested with this. You questioning everything.
Yes.
You started out questioning about your faith and why you had to do what you had to do. But did that questioning go outside of those lines? Were there other things that you had questions about?
Well, like I said, I never felt comfortable there, so
Okay.
I wanted something more. And so I was a kid that, again, my dad was very instrumental in my life as far as your life is, the world is your oyster.
Okay.
You can have anything
Very
you want.
encouraging to you then.
And anything, and I had a mind of if there's a will, there's a way. And so...
So you determined and you were affirmed by your dad. Okay.
Yes. And so I, had friends in high school. I was about 15 years old, and I had a boyfriend that was a Bible-believing Baptist boy.
Oh, you had a boyfriend who wasn't Catholic.
No, he was not Catholic. Well, he started going to the Calvary Church in Costa Mesa, California.
That's right. I read that on your forum.
And Chuck Smith was the head of that church. I'm sure you guys might know who he is.
Well, I'm excited about that because
Yeah.
I've been to Costa Mesa and I've met Chuck.
Yeah.
And I'm a Calvary Chapel pastor, so
Okay.
I'm very familiar with that whole thing. So when I heard that you were,
I knew you'd like that when you saw
Yeah.
that.
yeah, it's like, oh, yeah.
And Greg Laurie was there. He was
Yep,
the youth pastor at the time, and Skip Isaac and
Yeah.
Jack Hibbs was the other. Anyways, and so he it took a long convincing because my family was so against going outside of the Catholic religion.
So would you go with him on Sundays, or would you go to
No.
other
No,
services?
I would just hear him.
Okay, so you never really went to the church?
Not yet.
Okay.
Well, when did that change? When did you start?
I was 15, and
Okay.
he finally convinced me and my cousin to go. We went on a Monday night to Calvary Chapel in
Okay.
Costa Mesa, and there was Skip Isaac and
Skip.
long hair. And I was like, what is this? Where
I'm
are
friends
the
with his
kneelers?
cousin, by the way. He
Yeah.
lived in Washington, but never go ahead.
Yeah, so he...
You in Washington.
Am I name dropping again?
Yes,
No, go
there
ahead.
you go.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
and so
This is exciting.
he was very excited up there, and all the kids were jumping around, and I just was, what is this place? This isn't like what I'm used to.
Yeah.
Did you like it? Was it exciting to you?
Yeah, it was exciting. It was very exciting. And then the call, at the end was, okay, do you accept Jesus? And I felt led. So my cousin and I went down there, and
And this is the first time you visited?
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And I was 15. So we went down and we both gave our life to Christ. I had no idea what I was doing, but I did that. But I felt different as far as there was more life, I felt more lively. I came home, my parents and everyone was saying, what is wrong with her? She wasn't this way before. And I had a Bible, and they all just were not happy with it.
So,
Instead of being happy, they were unhappy.
Was it like exchanging a heavy religion for the blossoming of a new relationship?
Something like that, yes.
Wow.
Yes. So
How did your family life going forward after that? How did it affect the rest of your teenage years there?
I was a believer at 15, and then as time went on, I graduated from high school, and you go away from your friends, you don't no longer
Right.
with them,
Yeah.
and I started to wean away. Life was too it was just. There was just so much fun other than going to church and all that in my mind. And so I wandered off and started doing the life thing, the worldly thing,
I don't know if it's 50-50 or 60-40, but I found a lot of folks, they, those late teenage, early
Right.
20 years, you
Yeah.
you get distracted by the world. And
Right. And that's what happened.
Yeah, you don't put your priorities where they
Right.
probably should be. Yeah.
So I think as a teenager, I didn't understand, how the world could be so wicked, and so I got involved in a lot of unsavory type friends, and I just was out there just trying everything,
And this was in California,
in
right?
California. Yes.
Okay. So
And-
you had that's the petri dish of all culture is in
Right.
California.
Yes. But I always knew God was there. He was with me, and he never left me, but I just ignored him, at that time. And I wanted just to enjoy whatever came my way, that wasn't of God,
So with that sense that God was on the back burner, did you feel like you'd set your salvation aside
Yes.
and that was not any longer something that you're interested in?
Right. Yes. And I was one of those Christians that, my God's my genie. So whenever I need him, I'm crying to him, and
Okay, God was
Whenever you don't, you forget.
yeah. And whenever I get what I want, then I start doing my other, whatever it is
It's that
is going
vending
on.
machine God where
Yeah.
you put in a nickel's worth of prayer and
Right.
you make your choice.
Yeah. So I,
So that being said, how long did that period last? And then what was the spark that reignited your relationship with God? Was there an event? Was there a time
Yes.
frame? What happened
So
next?
I believe my Lord allowed for me at 30 years old, because I was so hard-headed, and I was dabbling back and forth between the Catholic and Christian religion.
Okay.
I was confused, and I wasn't sure of what exactly and who God was. So when I would pray to him, I would pray like he's still up there in the sky, and he's not anywhere near me. I didn't understand any of that until I got sick. And when I got sick, no one really knew first what I had.
You were about 30, you say?
I was 30 years old.
Were you married at the time?
I was not married yet.
Okay.
I married late.
All right.
So, so I was 30 years old, and I started experiencing a numbness in my mouth. I would eat something, and it felt like something was in. I thought something was in the food, so I dumped the food, and then as time went on, my eyes would see double, like I'd see two cars on top of each other. I started to slur my words. I was having a hard time, even walking and breathing, because it got into my breathing muscles. And so I went to the doctors. I went to many doctors, and they couldn't figure out what was wrong. I finally went to an ears, nose, and throat doctor, and he said, I know exactly what you have. You have an illness called Myasthenia Gravis. Like, what is that?
Is that like a Bell's palsy thing?
They thought that's what I had, but no. Myasthenia gravis is a debilitating autoimmune disease that affects the nerves and the muscles in the small muscles of your face. And I had droopy eyelids. I had I couldn't smile. I couldn't eat. I went from weighing 130 pounds down to 90. And I was literally dying. And finally, I saw a doctor that was,
an autoimmune doctor.
Yeah, a neurologist. Well, I had seen a neurologist, but he hadn't figured it out. So when I went back to him, he said, "Oh yeah, let me test you for that." And that's exactly what I had. So as it was very, very stressful and just a downer when that happened to me.
So you can correct me if I'm wrong, but
I do all the time.
Yeah, he does. So I suffer from an autoimmune disease, or did suffer, and so that the feeling is no one can explain what's wrong with you, and outwardly you look fine. People don't understand why you don't want to go do this, or why you don't feel good, or why you're doing this, or what's going on, but something's wrong.
Right.
And I have a new appreciation for folks with autoimmune disorder. I have ankylosing spondylitis. I try not to claim, I try not to call it out. But I got to a point in my life where I couldn't walk. And so I can relate. And the Lord healed me of that. And I know that's probably the direction we're going. But tell me more about.
Well, that illness, as time goes on, I suffered with it. I carried it.
Did you have facial feature drop? Okay.
Yes. And I always looked upset, and people would say, "Smile, what's wrong with you?" And
right, they never understand, do they?
They don't understand because they don't know, And
you're smiling now, and it looks good.
Yeah.
It looks good on you.
Yes, thank you. And so I learned through, and that's when I started to really lean on my Lord, and I started to realize I'm not in control of my life. This is something that I can't control, because everything that comes in my way, I always want to control it. This was something I could not control. Doctors could not control. They said there's no cure.
Right.
You're on medication for the rest of your life, and I refused. I refused to go there, and so I did everything in my power to wean off of the medication they tried to give me. So I started a prayer campaign with all my Christian friends and family. And
Okay. So now at 30 years old, you're wrestling with this autoimmune thing, and you're thinking, I'm out. This is out of control. It's out of my control. Lord, I need you in my life. And so now you're branching out and starting a prayer group.
Well, so that's what I was going to ask is, when did you go from, as Tristan called it, the vending machine God, to a real relationship with God? When did that start?
Well, I had to have surgery. And during the surgery, or while I was going in to be prepared for surgery, I was in the hospital, my family wasn't there. They were running late. And the only person that came to me at that moment was a Catholic priest to give me my last rites because they weren't sure if I was going to make the surgery. So
was this related to your disease?
yeah, it was called a thymectomy surgery that they had to
so
do.
they cut out your...
Yeah.
Okay.
So they were going to cut, they did cut across my throat and they were going to cut down. They said, there's a possibility. And I go, well, then I'll have a T for Trish.
Oh, well,
You know,
that
T
that
for
works.
Trish,
Sure.
you know. So, but I was I prayed and I hoped that, he would not cut down and just cut across so that maybe I wouldn't be so disfigured, because it's right here, right in my throat area. And so when I was in the hospital, it was just me and this priest and God, and he, I realized at that moment, that's all I have really is the Lord, the Lord is everything. And he's the one that's going to get me out of this no matter what.
Now, let me, as you're continuing your story, you're in there getting ready for the surgery and stuff, and it can be scary, and you don't know what's going to happen, but then you have that realization that he's all you have.
Yes.
Let me ask you this. Did you have that, your mind can't comprehend it, but you had this peace about where you were at?
Yes, I did.
This is a life, you got the priest giving last rites type of thing.
Right.
There, but your peace just doesn't seem to fit into that category, but it's an incredible, a peace that passes understanding. Is that what you were experiencing?
Yes, that's what I felt. And that's when I realized that's who he is, and he's the one that can make it or break it for me. I don't have any control of this. So I went, down, as you say, when they put you out.
Yeah.
Peacefully.
Yeah.
Not knowing whether I was going to wake up or, be in another place when I woke up.
Right.
So I was okay with that. And my family wasn't there. No one was there to pretty much say.
Well, did your family know you were going into surgery?
Yeah. They were just running late, California and their traffic,
wow.
and everything just kind of goes, moves along.
Yeah.
And if you're late, you could miss everything, So, and then when I came to, I was, after the surgery, I realized, he's the one that carried me through that, and anyway, so the doctors after surgery, they said, we don't know if any of this will help you. It's just, you had this kind of illness kind of attacks its own body and the nerves and the
They only
muscles.
know, certain generic ways to kind of approach it.
So they just the doctor kept insisting you should, take these drugs and this is how you're going to live the rest of your life.
Was it stuff to suppress your immune system? Was that?
Okay. There was some to suppress that and another one just for the symptoms to kind of keep them in control. And every 3 hours I'd have to take this pill to help me. And it didn't help very well. It just kind of masked it a little bit, but it was a thing that I kept saying to myself, I am not going to let this thing control me. I'm going to control it. And through my Lord, this is going to, and I prayed and I begged him, please just make this where it's just a little bit where I can be a human again. Just take a little bit away. I didn't even want to be completely healed. I wanted just a little bit, because I wasn't able to speak for very long. The voice would just dissipate as I'm speaking. And then I sounded like a drunk. I had to carry a little card that said, I have Myasthenia Gravis, and I'm not drunk, if I got pulled over by the police.
Okay.
And it was just 15 years of that.
Was that 15 years
after the surgery?
After the surgery. So for 15 more years, you were praying the Lord would heal you and that you'd have victory over this illness.
Right.
So bring us up to that.
That's when
the healing.
I've got one more question because I like to. This is no matter what the testimony is. I kind of slide this question in there is because I like to know. I'm curious, and I think the people at home are too. Did you have any really tough conversations with the Lord at that time? Did you question? Did you? I know when I went through this, Lord, just please let me sleep. Just please let me be able to sleep. That was my prayer, my cry out to the Lord, because I couldn't sleep. I hurt so bad.
Right.
So what were those kind of crucial conversations with the Lord like during that time, if you don't mind sharing it with us?
I never blamed him for any of things, anything that happened to me. I never blamed him, because I knew that this was something that I brought on myself. As far as this illness, they don't know what causes it. They feel stress could be part of it. They sometimes think it's part of the environment. They're still not sure. They just guess. It could be a traumatic event, things like that. So I have never blamed God for that. And I just knew that this was something that the Lord tested me on, and to see if I truly loved him, I believe. Because, like I told you guys, in the beginning, I used him, like a genie, whenever I needed him. That's when I ran to him. And then once he gave me what I needed, then I'd
run away again. Okay.
See ya.
See you next
I don't
time.
want nothing to do with you.
Well, that's the fact that you've categorized it in a testing of your faith. There's some people that are uncomfortable with the thought that God would impose any kind of illness, and they would say, well, no, that's not God doing the illness, that God doesn't do that. But somehow you've received it as God speaking to you directly, dealing with you directly to test your faith. And I think there is a biblical, grounds for believing that God allows his children to be tested for maturity. And it's not so much that he can find out, God already knows our hearts. He knows how much we love him or don't love him. It's so that we can find out. So the testing
for
is so that we can see just how much we depend upon him. So
Right. So like I said, I never blamed him. And so I knew that he could heal me. I knew he could. I just didn't want, and because of how I treated him before, I didn't expect him to heal me 100%. I wanted just a little bit, just so I can...
Just a little bit of God's healing.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Just so like an hors d'oeuvre or something.
Yeah, so I can deal
appetizer
with life. And during this debilitating time where I was down, I still went to work. I shied away from all my friends, though, because...
They have expectations that
you're
able to do things.
Yeah, they're in the world. And so they would call me, and I just let the phone ring and ring and ring. And
so you isolated yourself a bit.
Isolated myself, and so one day this.
Yeah, that you define it as 15 years,
right?
And you said you led up to. I just want a little bit of healing, implying that there was total healing. So what happened? Tell us, when was that moment?
I knew he could do whatever. He can do anything, and so I just didn't want him to feel that I was using him again. So when I started to feel better, I did my own thing, which was wean myself out of these medications, because some of these medications you can't just
they have side effects.
Right.
Yeah.
So I weaned myself down to the without doctor consent, because the doctors the ones I had, all they wanted to do is give me drugs and see you later.
And medicate and bill,
and see you in a month, and give me more drugs. And so I'm not a drug person. I just don't like taking pills, period. So I weaned myself off, and then the Lord I could feel that this was going, and it was leaving me, and I never felt, people say my illness. Well, I always said, this is an illness that I carry, and I'm going to control it. It's not going to control me. And at the same time, with my Lord, I know that this can go away.
Sometimes there's this, it's been described, at least I've heard it this way, that you have God's sovereignty and man's responsibility.
Right.
And God doesn't necessarily impose his sovereignty on you, and we can't make God do anything. But like your willingness to wean yourself off the drugs, and God was meeting you there, and all of a sudden you had that sense that something was being intertwined in healing for you, and that was the point of contact, and some use that for different types of healings, that there's a point of contact.
Right.
A person says, I believe, Lord, and God meets you there.
Right.
So that's what it sounds.
Yes.
Your action was to wean yourself off, to put yourself in a place that any healing credit would go to God.
Right. Because all the glory and honor, it goes to him.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think it works in also the way, I was the Holy Spirit told me, he said, don't even start taking these drugs. They wanted to give me shots that were the biologic shots that, suppress your immune system and different types of things. And, I prayed to the Lord, and what I heard back was, no, you don't need those. I'm your provider. I'm your healer. And, miraculously, I'm walking. I got to a point I couldn't walk. People would ask me, what's wrong with your back? What's wrong with your leg? And people don't understand. I can so relate with that.
Yeah.
The social life goes downhill and things because people don't understand. They don't outwardly see what you're feeling, what you're going through.
Right. Yeah.
And meanwhile, that whole time I'm working on my relationship with the Lord, trying to figure out and questioning and asking. So I can kind of understand. So how did your life change after you were healed?
Yeah. What's it like this side of the healing?
Yeah.
Oh, it's wonderful. I feel free of everything. The Lord has freed me from so much, because as a kid growing up, like I said, I questioned everything, and things never went the way I wanted my life to go. There was always some curveball, and I would get really angry, at the time. And my mom would say, you drown yourself in a glass of water. You just take things way too seriously, and I said, well, Mom, it's like, I never was asked to come to this earth. I mean, you brought me to this, at that
You're
time,
right,
I would say, you brought me into this earth.
Yeah.
And I never was asked, You
didn't have a choice in it.
This place sucks, It does. But, so I, after this, healing, my life just changed, I started going more to church, and I started to read my Bible, and which I was doing before, but more so after, I felt this gratitude
You had
towards the Lord.
developed a hunger for it.
Yeah, I developed a big hunger for him. And I remember praying to God and just giving my life back to him again, kind of revisiting that. And he basically said, your life is going to flip, it's going to change dramatically. And some of this old stuff is going to be peeled off, and you're not going to like it. And I'm like, okay.
So he's forewarning you that it might be a little painful.
Yeah, very
uncomfortable.
painful.
Yeah.
So at the time, I had, at 32, I got married, was my first marriage. And the man I married was a musician. And he, at the time, claimed to be Christian, but I think he fell off real fast. I don't know if, his life...
Well, to be honest, at the time, you were just newly into this whole relationship with Jesus, so you were still a babe in arms when it came to having that spiritual discernment.
So, yes. And so I wanted, us to go to church, and he went to church with me for a little bit, and he just wasn't comfortable. So I started going to church by myself, and I felt very uncomfortable because, here I'm married, and I want my partner to come with me. And this went on for 10 years, without, going to church by myself. And so then another 5 years came, and he went to church with me, and it was on and off.
Okay.
And during our marriage, we lived a really good life. We had a music store and school. And
Oh, he was full into the music.
yeah,
then.
and
Wow.
it I'd tell him, it's the Lord that has done this for us, and
Blessed you.
we should be very, very thankful, and you should always thank Him every time things happen with the business. It went from a nothing business to 20 years in, and it was very successful. And
Where was this at?
in Rancho Santa Margarita, California, which is southern Orange County,
Okay.
Southern California. And it's interesting because in high school, I went to a school called Rancho Alamitos High School. And then when we started this business, it used to be called something else like Strings, Etc.
Yeah.
And when we took over it, we named it Rancho Canyon Music. And it's like this ranch thing,
Okay, yeah.
cowboys and all that. And now I'm here at a cowboy church. So it's like there's something to that, I believe, that everything kind of goes in a circle, and but anyways, and so being married, I tried many, many times to make this marriage work, because 20 years, 22 years is how long I was married.
Wow.
But it was hard living with someone that is not with the Lord, It's very hard. I prayed a lot for him, and I'd go to Bible studies, and I'd have, my women help pray for, him to come back to the Lord. And it came to a time where my Bible study teacher said, you know what, Trish, you need to stop that. Stop praying for him. It's not going to happen. It hasn't happened in 15 years. It's not going to happen. So
did you take that as encouragement or
very
just
insulted.
Yeah, I was
very
going to say.
insulted, I couldn't believe it. But she was 80 years old, and she's very wise. She was a very wise lady. So it just...
Do you think she got it right?
Oh, yes, she did.
Oh, she got it right
I
then.
believe so.
And it hurt to hear the truth.
Yes, it did. It did, yeah.
Oh, my.
So, but the Lord allowed me to be in that family for some time, and I think it was more because his family was they were all non-believers, mostly. So I think he wanted me there to be the seed, and to leave seeds everywhere before that whole marriage dissolved.
Okay.
I don't think anything that we get, the Lord allows for us is wasted, Everything that we do, and it's all because of him.
Yeah.
I always like to say that, God has a plan for our lives, but we mistakenly sometimes think that plan is always to benefit us.
Yeah,
and that's
and it's not
the
about
case.
us.
It's not about us. And there's so many times that we go and we plant these seeds and things turn out completely different than we planned.
Mm-hmm.
And it's to benefit, his kingdom and all the things that he's doing and
Right.
bring other people in. And so,
Right.
So I'm going to ask you a generic question that you can answer just as generic as you want to, but I
Okay.
always ask our guests because we get so many folks
He
from California.
specializes in generic.
Go ahead. So California, Colorado, New York, New Jersey, we got these folks. What got you to East Tennessee?
Well, the divorce started right before COVID, right before 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And it went on for almost 4 years.
Yeah.
The divorce.
It just,
because of the business and because of the home and all the stuff we
Yeah.
had, and dogs and everything. So there was a lot of that. So he set me up so well, the Lord. I mean, he knew my heart, and he knew that my life was all about just living a good life with people that love the Lord and just want to worship him, you know. And so soon when the house sold, he helped me get a house in Arkansas. Well, the reason I ended up in Northwest Arkansas,
Yeah, tell us that.
was because two friends of mine were retiring, and they ended up moving there. And so they told me, hey, we're going there. Do you want to come check it out? Because they knew my situation. And
Okay.
so I went, and I really enjoyed it. It was a really pretty place. And Northwest Arkansas has a lot of transplants, just like here in Tennessee. And so it's different, but yet it's so new there, And so I ended up there. I bought a house on off the internet. outright. And after I sold my home, I was able to buy a house out there for a quarter of what I sold my house.
Cost of living's a whole lot different.
I'm familiar with that kind
Yeah.
of thing.
Yeah. So this house was gorgeous to me, and it was my home, and the Lord gave me that home so I can steward it. Because
Yeah.
I don't believe anything we have here we own. You know,
Right.
It's all
given
temporary.
to
It's all
us
temporary.
Yeah,
to
temporary.
steward and
Yeah.
see how we take care of our things that the Lord provides. You know,
Yeah.
even people in
And
our
that
lives.
applies to co-hosts too.
Yes. Yeah. So I was there for 2 years and, no job because, when I was back in California, well, I was working because I took a job working for an infertility specialist. And while I was there, the COVID thing happened and everybody in that place had to have the injection and I call it the jab.
Yeah, the jab.
Yeah.
And
We're familiar with that.
That's the YouTube term, I think. officially, is the jab.
everybody did that except me. And the doctor didn't know until a few months later. And he learned that I was the only one. So he figured a way to get rid of me. So, and it was at the worst time possible during
Yeah.
this divorce. And so I went from having, some income to no income. So I relied on him, the Lord.
So you had moved prior to your divorce being final then?
Yeah, I had to.
Okay.
Yeah, the divorce was still hanging because of the business and the dogs. He wanted
Okay.
the dogs. So as I got here, not here, but to Arkansas, my parents went with me, my sister, and they moved me there. And then when they went home, wow, I was like, I'm here all alone with nobody other than my two friends that, they want to just they don't want me around all the time on the
Right.
third wheel.
Yeah.
So I was there all by myself from having all these friends, all these family members to just me, myself, and I. And again, that's another test the Lord provided for me. And but this time I really hung on to the Lord, and I really knew that there was a reason for that whole move.
It just kind of reminded we recently interviewed Warren, who had taken that 500-mile walk, and most of it was just him and the Lord. And so there's something to be said about the benefit of that isolated, quiet time with the Lord, and how you can hear Him much better when there's
still
no,
and hear Him,
when there's no noise going on.
And so I had a lot of good talks with Him every day, and while I was there, and I still was trying to figure out what am I going to do now.
Yeah.
As what am I going to do? I'm still not old enough to retire, so I just relied on Him, and He opened doors for me as I, every day there was new things to see, new places to go.
And then Tennessee. How'd you get here?
Well, during the time in Arkansas, I would go because I didn't have a job. I would go to the gym, and people were playing this game called pickleball.
Oh, right.
And
Yes.
so I went and I learned, and I was really bad at it in the beginning, and I learned pickleball. And so as I was playing pickleball, there was people that were so kind. They knew, that I was there alone, and they just embraced me. And there was a gentleman there that I'd always kind of talked to, but not a whole lot. And his name was Mark.
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 Seems like I've heard that name before.
Yeah.
Mark.
Okay.
So Mark was a pickleball player too, and but I knew not much of him other than he was a pickleball player. And we every time I'd go in the mornings, there he was, or sometimes he wasn't, but when he was, we'd have a really good time playing pickleball. And we'd kind of look at each other, when you just know something's different than just a friend. And and that went on. Then I got the pickleball elbow and, like tennis elbow.
Yeah.
And my doctor said that I had to not play pickleball for some time. So I went off the pickleball for 8 months. And
Cold turkey.
Yeah.
She sounded like it's a drug. You know,
With the
it's
withdrawal
off
from
the
It was
pickleball
awful.
for 8
It was
months.
awful. It was awful.
It was awful because it was an addiction almost.
Have you ever played pickleball, Tristan? Do you know pickleball?
No, I play a lot of tennis. I was in the tennis team.
Oh,
at
you're a
school.
I
tennis
picked up
guy.
pickleball. It was a big fad here for the church for a while too.
Pickleball?
A lot of pickleball players in the church.
Yeah.
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 I hear there's some major injuries from it though. So
There
go ahead.
is. So anyways, so then while I was gone, there was Mark was going to play pickleball, and he was wondering what happened to me. And but before that, I had gone, because I would go to my Bible study group of ladies and every week. And there was a lady there that always talked about her former husband that had passed. And she was it was our Bible study teacher.
Okay.
And she just talked about him. He was a chaplain and he loved the Lord and taught, others. And she talked so fondly of him. And I said to her, Sarah, I hope someday I find someone like your husband, but I hope the Lord brings that to me, not that I go looking. Because before I would get the husband in a sense, I would go out to find. And I said to her, we had like a really nice conversation. And that night I went home and my divorce was ending. It had ended, actually.
Finalized.
Okay. Paperwork, all that.
Yeah.
And I said, that night, I said to the Lord, I prayed and I asked him, I said, Lord, you know that I love to be married. I'm not a single type girl. I'm not, I love being married. Mm-hmm. And, but I want to be married to the right person, not, where it's a give and take situation. So if you want me to be single, I'll be okay. But just let me know, let me know. But if you want me married, then you need to bring him to me. I'm not going to go out there and look for him.
Oh, wow.
I was very demanding in a sense.
Yeah, a little DoorDash delivery from God. Okay.
So I was working at this place at the time too. It's a flea market that I was selling my stuff to make money because I still couldn't get a real job because they wanted me to have
everybody wanted the
vaccine.
Jab.
The jab. And so I started working at this flea market. So that's where I was. And the next day, I'm there looking at my different rooms and trying to clean up the rooms and everything, getting them ready before all the people show up. And this guy calls me from down the hall and says, Trish. And I look up and I see that it's Mark.
Wow.
But I didn't know his name because 8 months had gone. And
most people probably don't.
Yeah. I totally forgot his name. But I didn't say that to him. As he approached, he said, I really want for us to, I missed you at the pickleball and can we go out to dinner, And I said,
wow.
No. I said, I can't do dinner because I work every night at this place, but I could do breakfast. So he says, well, take my number down because I don't have my phone with me. And I said, okay. So I started to look down to take his number and I couldn't remember his name. So I'm like, what is his name? And then okay.
And you were in a real pickle with that.
Yeah. I said, pickleball dude.
Yeah. You have just now given him a nickname that everybody's going to be calling him here.
Pickleball dude. So I wrote down his number and then I called my girlfriend. I said, you remember that guy that I used to talk about? And she goes, oh yeah, his name's Mark. And I'm like, oh,
thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Pickleball.
Did you this time go, oh, by the way, thank you, God, for Mark?
Yeah.
Just remember his name and for sending him my way.
But at the time, I didn't realize that was answer to prayer,
Well, it is because you asked him for God to bring the man.
Yeah,
he did it. Yeah.
Right. And then so we went out to breakfast and we talked and we just kept seeing each other after that. And within 6 months, he proposed.
And the rest is history, right?
Yeah. And then we got married 6 months later. And then Mark and I had always wanted to live in Tennessee. And we said, let's go to Tennessee. So we went all over the state.
So you both you're newbies here. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So two years later, we moved here. And, we've been here 2 years. And
so you've been married how long now then?
We've been married 2 years.
2 years. Wow.
Yeah.
So you got married
So
and
as soon
just
as we got
basically
married,
you
yeah,
moved.
we started to the process of selling and moving.
People tell me they talk about moving to Tennessee and they try out this place and look across the state. I'm like, you don't have to do that.
Yeah.
Middle Tennessee's got Nashville. It's a little on the trendy side. Memphis, we don't even count them. Okay. East Tennessee. Tennessee.
So I believe we're not here by chance.
No.
I believe the Lord has us here for a reason. It could be for a season. It could be for a long time. But there's a reason for us to be here. And
I'm excited. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
Think about this. The very fact that you are sitting in a podcast that will be going out, this is part of the reason that you are here in Tennessee.
Yep.
And that's kind of like we're sitting in fulfilled blessing and fulfilled vision. So go ahead.
Yes.
I'm done being excited.
And you guys are really getting involved with the church and stuff. I know I've had a thing or two come up and they say, hey, call Mark and Trish. They're doing the care team thing now. So you want to tell us anything about that? Or?
Yes, and we are now part of the group, part of the church as far as, helping them with, issues of the heart as far as, people that are sick or people that don't feel that the Lord is helping them in any situation that, anyway, so what I think we're doing, and I mean, it's evolving every day, and He's put some people in our path to care for and to give them encouragement, and I think
to come alongside.
Yeah, to come
just to make sure that nobody falls through those cracks. That
Right. And I mean, it's something right along Mark's alley because he was a chaplain at one of these motor horse racing places that he'll, I'm sure, tell you all about that. But
I think here you have to say it with a lot of respect. One of those motor racing places.
Yeah, motor racing places.
Those things. Those things.
But the interesting part is that when going back to Sarah and her husband, he was a chaplain, and Mark was a chaplain, my husband now. So, I mean, that's not a coincidence.
Well, because you prayed that you want a husband like Sarah's husband, not the dead part, but
not the dead part.
You just got the wrong chaplain, right? Now you asked for God to send you the chaplain, you got the right one, right?
Right.
Okay, I got
so, you. And so, him and I are a team now, and because when we first moved here, he tried to get involved at the Bristol location, where they have the
motor speed,
Bristol Motor Speedway.
Yes.
You see,
and I don't know what it's called, but anyways, he tried to get involved in that, but they did away with that program. So, and he's attempted many times to get back into that, and it's not happening that way. And instead, we're here at the church where we've been asked to be, in a sense, we're called the care team, but we're very similar.
Yeah. What I think is interesting is it's how the Spirit ministers. In fact, the Greek word for or the name for the helper is paraclete, and para means to come alongside, to help, and that's what you do in the ministry you have is you come alongside and minister to people as they need.
Right, and. So far it's going well, and I'm sure we're going to get some not so good people at times, and it's part of the way.
And ministry's messy, it is.
Yeah, it's the way it goes,
okay.
And I feel for the church as far as the pastor and his wife because they deal with this all the time, They deal with people that aren't so nice, and some people are very tender to them, and others are not. So. It's just part of the way the world is,
Yeah.
And that's something that we'll be taking off their plates, which is going to be tremendous as far as them not having to worry about that as much,
Well, I know Pastor Tim and Jen, I'm sure they appreciate it very much. And I'm going to tell you, like I tell a lot of the folks that have moved here, welcome. We're glad you're here. Yeah. I'm glad you're a part of this church. And thank you for you and Mark too.
Yeah.
Any final words of encouragement before we close this podcast out?
I would say, because I think we relate with the autoimmune thing. If there's somebody out there suffering from a silent disease, whether it's autoimmune or whatever, what would be your words of encouragement or thoughts, or what would you tell those folks that are watching that have a similar issue that you had? What would you say to those folks?
I would say that you are to always just trust in the Lord and know that He is good. And He loves us immensely and
Amen.
will do anything and everything. He just is the kind of God that would turn tables for you, would just
Yes.
heal. He's your healer. He's your physician. He's everything, and you need to just trust and know that He can do it.
Amen to that.
Give it all to Him, right?
Yeah.
Amen to that.
Yeah.
Just
I
got to
like it.
do it.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. We really appreciate it. Justin, you want to close us out?
Sure. As always, thank you for joining us. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Hey, comment down below. You got a question? You got a praise report? Anything? Comment down below. Don't forget to check out our previous podcasts. Anything else, Tristan?
I think that does it. Thank you
Okay.
once again, Trish,
Thank
for
you.
being here.
Yes, thanks,
Yeah.
Trish, for coming. We
And-
hope to have Mark on soon.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to be talking to your
He'll
husband.
be
so-
next.
All right. Thank you for watching.
Bye, everybody.